Imagine for a moment that the deepest love story of your life is not something you find, but something that finds you. Not through swiping on screens or carefully worded messages, but in the quiet unfolding of divine orchestration. What if I told you that God may already be writing your love story, and you, yes you, might be walking right past your soulmate without even realizing it? This world is obsessed with the visible, the spectacular, and the instantaneous. But the language of God is subtle. It whispers rather than shouts, it nudges rather than demands. And when it comes to matters of the heart, especially the sacred bond of soulmates, God seldom operates on our timeline or through our expectations. Instead, He introduces souls in the most ordinary moments and dresses destiny in the robes of routine. You see, love at its deepest level is not about butterflies or chemistry. It's about recognition. Recognition of a soul you've never met, but somehow always known. Recognition that goes beyond the eyes and speaks to the spirit. And God, the author of time and love, crafts these encounters not in grand entrances, but in quiet intersections. What if your soulmate isn't someone you chase, but someone you become ready to receive? What if the timing of love isn't based on desperation or longing, but on growth, alignment, and divine readiness? Too often we look for love in places of noise, but God speaks most clearly in silence. He speaks through changes, through delays, through people we didn't expect and paths we never planned. Sometimes He allows our hearts to break so He can prepare them for someone worthy of holding them whole. Sometimes He removes people who are almost right to make room for the one who is perfectly wrong for everyone else, but just right for you. This speech is not about helping you go out and find someone. It's about awakening your awareness to how God may already be revealing them. The truth is, God has a divine rhythm. He orchestrates every meeting, every smile, every shared glance, and while you're praying for your future spouse, they might already be walking past you, working next to you, or helping you through your current struggle. Your soulmate might not come wrapped in the packaging you expect. They might not say the right words at first. They may enter your life during chaos or stillness, through pain or joy, but one thing is certain. When they arrive, your soul will know before your mind does. You will feel peace where you once felt pressure. You will feel freedom where you once felt fear. Let's step back from the worldly view of finding love. Let's step into a sacred perspective, a heavenly understanding that God doesn't just give you a partner, He aligns your spirit with another. You don't just marry someone's looks or charm. You unite with their purpose, their journey, and their faith. So if you feel like you're waiting too long, if you wonder if your prayers have been ignored, if you're tired of almost loves and false starts, know this: God is not late. He is preparing the one who will not just enter your life, but fit into your calling. Your soulmate isn't lost. They're hidden. Hidden until your heart and theirs are both healed, aligned, and spiritually awakened. Hidden until the timing is right, not for romance, but for purpose. Now, let's uncover the 7 quiet ways God introduces you to your soulmate, often without you even realizing it, through unexpected friendships that grow over time. It often begins with nothing more than a familiar presence, someone who simply feels easy to talk to, whose company doesn't demand performance. There's no grand announcement, no lightning in the sky, just a gradual unfolding. This is how God works. When He plants the seed of a soulmate connection, He does so beneath the surface of familiarity. He allows friendship to blossom first, because true love is not built on intensity alone, but on trust, understanding, and quiet companionship. You may have passed this person 100 times before. You may have laughed together, worked on the same projects, or even prayed for one another's breakthroughs without realizing that God was building a bridge of closeness, one plank at a time. There's wisdom in why the relationship starts this way. When love is rushed, it often burns too fast. But when God allows it to begin as friendship, it grows with roots deep enough to survive any storm. Often, when you're not ready to fall in love, God sends someone to walk beside you, not to sweep you off your feet, but to help you stand on your own. And in that standing, you discover something sacred. The one who makes you feel safest may not be the one who dazzles you at first glance, but the one who consistently shows up. Not because they're trying to impress you, but because they care, even when they don't have to. Even when they don't have to. God knows our hearts better than we do. He knows that what we ask for in romance often pales in comparison to what we need in covenant. And so, in His divine patience, He gives us a glimpse of love without declaring it outright. That's why many soulmates are revealed only after years of walking together without knowing what's truly being built. Look around you. That person you confide in, the one who prays with you, who encourages you in your darkest moments, they might not be there by accident. God doesn't waste placement. He assigns people to your life based on purpose. And sometimes, the one you call just a friend is the one He's preparing to become so much more. Love that grows from friendship is honest. It sees you without your mask. It's not impressed by charm, it's grounded in character. And in a world so quick to chase sparks, God gives you something better, a steady flame that will never burn out. He lets you walk together in purpose before you walk down the aisle, and in doing so He ensures that when the veil of romance is lifted, what remains is not illusion, but a deep, divine connection formed through time. So if you find yourself growing closer to someone without knowing why, if your hearts begin to share silence without awkwardness, and your burdens feel lighter in their presence, pay attention. It might not be the beginning of love, but the recognition of it through shared purpose or calling. When God intertwines two destinies, He often begins by aligning their purpose. Soulmates are not merely two people who love each other. They are two souls whose journeys point in the same direction. While the world chases compatibility in hobbies and preferences, God draws attention to mission and meaning. He knows that the most lasting unions are those where two people serve a higher calling together. Have you ever met someone who seems to be passionate about the same mission you are? Who burns with the same desire to serve, to heal, to uplift, or to build something bigger than themselves? That's no accident. That is orchestration. God doesn't just connect hearts, He connects callings. When you are walking in obedience to your purpose, you are most likely to collide with the one who's been assigned to walk with you. It may happen in a ministry setting, or while volunteering, or even while discussing deep ideas that stir your spirit. Something within you feels at home when you're working together, not because of physical attraction, but because of spiritual alignment. It's as though the fire in your heart dances in rhythm with theirs, and in that dance something extraordinary is born. Unity not just in affection, but in assignment. God often places soulmates on the same path before He allows them to see each other clearly. Why? Because He wants you to recognize their soul before you're distracted by their appearance. He wants your admiration to rise from how they serve, how they care, how they obey the quiet nudges of the Holy Spirit. This kind of connection is built not in luxury but in labor, not in comfort but in calling. And when two people serve together, when they build together, they grow together. They learn how to carry burdens, how to stay humble, how to uplift when one is weak. These are not just qualities of a good teammate, They are the makings of a lifelong partner. The truth is, your soulmate isn't simply someone who completes you. They are someone who complements your calling. They don't take away your purpose. They help sharpen it. They don't distract you from God's plan. They amplify it. So if you find yourself drawn to someone who shares your passion for the things of God, someone who challenges you spiritually and walks beside you in the journey of faith, pause. Look again. What you might see is more than coincidence. It could be divine partnership. This is why some of the greatest love stories are born in the trenches of purpose. When you least expect it, in the middle of obeying God, you'll look beside you and find someone running just as hard in the same direction, and you'll realize you weren't just seeking God alone. You were seeking Him together by repeated crossings or coincidences. There are moments in life when you keep running into the same person, and at first it feels like mere coincidence. Perhaps you see them at a place of worship, then again at a coffee shop, and somehow again in an online community or event. You shrug and think, what are the odds? But what if those odds are being calculated in heaven? What if divine hands are quietly orchestrating the crossing of your paths until your soul finally pays attention? In the hopes that the birth of your child, you will inevitably have. God rarely shouts when He speaks. He whispers through patterns, repetition, and moments we dismiss as ordinary. The repeated appearance of a person in your life may not be random. It may be God gently trying to get your attention. We often pray for signs, expecting thunder and lightning, yet miss the soft tap of providence showing up in familiar faces. Repeated encounters are God's way of reinforcing an unseen connection. It's as though He's drawing a circle in your life with that person inside it, slowly, purposefully, and without pressure. The key is to remain spiritually awake, to notice not only the presence of the person, but also how your spirit feels when they are near. Do you feel seen without being judged? Do you feel a sense of comfort you can't explain? Do you leave those moments with more peace, more clarity, or an unspoken joy? Some people enter our lives like fireworks, loud, dramatic, and short-lived. But others appear again and again like the sunrise, soft, consistent, unnoticed, until one day you realize you've begun to rely on their light. That's what divine repetition feels like. It builds slowly until your soul finally recognizes this is not just someone passing through, this is someone placed here. Scripture is filled with stories where divine appointments were arranged through unlikely repetition. Consider Ruth and Boaz. Her steps were not guided by logic, but by grace. She kept gleaning in the same field, under the same man's provision, unaware that God was weaving together a love story that would change history. Sometimes, the field you're standing in is the very ground where God will let your heart take root. And still, many dismiss such patterns because they don't look like what the world defines as fate. We've been taught to look for lightning bolts and overwhelming attraction, but God often reveals destiny through the ordinary, because the extraordinary is hidden within it. The challenge is to look deeper. When someone keeps reappearing in your journey, don't just ask, why do I keep seeing them? Ask instead, God, is there something you're trying to show me? It's not about jumping to romantic conclusions, it's about cultivating awareness. It's about realizing that God, in His gentle genius, often uses repetition to awaken recognition. These repeated crossings may feel subtle, but they are sacred. They are the echo of something eternal, a quiet knocking on the door of your spirit saying, look again, this may be more than what you see. through delayed or broken relationships that prepared you. There is a strange and sacred beauty in delay, especially when it comes to love. We often resist it. We think that delay is denial. But in the hands of God, delay is often protection. Sometimes, before God introduces your soulmate, He allows your heart to be broken by the wrong people so it can recognize the right one, not by fantasy, but by wisdom. Many people walk into our lives not to stay, but to teach. They teach us what love is not. They reveal our blind spots. They stretch our capacity to forgive, to trust, to grow. And while those seasons are painful, they are also purposeful. God uses them to refine your expectations, to sharpen your discernment, and to awaken your soul to what it truly needs, not what it merely wants. Have you ever thanked God for the relationship that didn't work out? It's a strange kind of gratitude, isn't it? But hindsight reveals what foresight could never predict, that some heartbreaks were heaven's intervention. Some delays were God blocking you from a lesser future. Some people were meant to fall away so that your heart could be prepared to receive someone it once would have rejected. Often, your soulmate does not arrive until you've outgrown the version of yourself that once settled for less. And so, the brokenness you endured was not punishment. It was preparation. Each disappointment stripped away illusions. Each goodbye made space for something truer. And in time, God allowed healing to do its work, so that when the right soul appears, you won't cling from fear, you'll connect from peace. It is in the seasons of loneliness that God sharpens the vision of your soul. It is in the silence after a heartbreak that you begin to understand what your spirit truly values. Kindness, integrity, spiritual alignment, emotional maturity. These are the qualities your soulmate will carry, but you cannot recognize them if your heart is still full of noise from the past. The delay also works in the other direction. Sometimes God is working on the person meant for you. They are not yet ready. They too may be in the fire of refinement, walking through their own lessons, healing their own wounds, learning how to love properly. You are not the only one being prepared. Your soulmate is also in process. And when finally you meet, after the delays, after the broken chapters, you will not need to force or prove anything. The pieces will fit, not because the person is perfect, but because both of you have been purified through the waiting. Love, in that moment, will not feel rushed or desperate. It will feel like something you've known was coming, something worth every tear, every prayer, and every quiet night when you wondered if God had forgotten you. But He hadn't. He was simply taking His time to make sure your heart would recognize the one He was preparing, by inner peace that defies external circumstances. The world tells you to follow the spark, to chase the thrill, to get swept away in a wave of emotion, but God, in His eternal wisdom, offers something far deeper: peace. Not the fragile kind that depends on circumstances, but the kind that settles in your spirit, even when nothing around you makes sense. When God introduces you to your soulmate, one of the surest signs is the calm that rises within you, often without any logical reason. You may not know why you feel safe with them. You may not even be able to explain what draws you closer, but somewhere deep inside, your soul begins to breathe. There's no anxiety, no performance, no constant questioning of whether you're enough. Instead, there's a quiet knowing, a sense of home. And this peace, more than anything else, is God's signature. You can stand in the middle of a storm and still feel anchored if you're with the one God appointed for you. It's not that the challenges disappear. It's that the weight of walking through them becomes lighter because of who walks beside you. That's the kind of peace God brings. It doesn't come in the form of perfection, but presence. the presence of someone who doesn't complete your life but reflects the wholeness you've already been building with God. This peace is different from excitement. Excitement can be fleeting. It rises and falls with adrenaline, but peace is steady. Peace doesn't always shout, it often whispers, "This is right." It's what allows you to trust even when you're afraid. It's what settles your racing thoughts and silences your doubts. You don't feel the need to pretend. You don't feel the pressure to perform. You just feel seen, fully and honestly. Often, this peace comes at the most unexpected time. Maybe you're in the middle of healing. Maybe you're focused on your relationship with God. And yet, in the midst of this quiet season, someone enters your life and brings with them a sense of stability that feels heaven-sent. You might try to explain it to others, but it won't make sense to them. And that's okay. What matters is that your spirit knows. When God is in the union, He confirms it with peace. Colossians 3:15 says, "Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts." That means peace is not a feeling, it's a compass. It's how God shows you which way to go. If the relationship feels like rest, if it brings clarity and not confusion, if it brings stillness rather than chaos, that is not something you created. That is something you were given. In a world full of noise and competition, the one who brings you peace will stand out, not because they try to impress you, but because they allow your soul to rest. That's not ordinary, that's divine alignment. And when you feel that kind of peace in someone's presence, don't dismiss it. That might be God's quiet way of saying, "Here they are, I brought them to you." Through mutual healing or similar painful journeys. Sometimes God uses pain as a bridge. Two people walking through similar valleys, loss, betrayal, trauma, heartbreak, may feel as though they are worlds apart, yet God sees their wounds and begins a silent weaving, the weaving of souls who understand each other's brokenness, not through words, but through experience. When God introduces you to your soulmate, it is often through mutual healing. Not perfect people, but people made soft and wise through suffering. Pain, when handed to God, becomes sacred. It becomes a language few understand, but those who do recognize each other without needing to explain. When you meet someone who's been where you've been, who understands the silent weight you carry, who doesn't try to fix you but simply walks beside you, there is something holy in that union. It is not built on fairy tales. It is built on shared survival. Perhaps you've been alone in your healing for a long time. Maybe you've walked with God through seasons where it felt like no one could understand. And then, one day, you find someone whose story echoes yours. Their wounds match your scars. Their faith has been forged in fire, just like yours. And in that moment, you realize that healing is not always solitary. Sometimes it's shared. This connection doesn't begin with romance. It begins with recognition. You see their strength not because they never broke, but because they let God rebuild them, and they see yours. You are not drawn to each other's beauty, but to each other's becoming. You respect the process. You honor the pain. You understand the cost of getting here. God often lets two people walk through similar storms so they can be each other's shelter. Not to depend on one another for healing, but to remind one another that healing is possible. That God doesn't just restore, He rewards. That after the fire comes the forming of something precious, something lasting. Your soulmate may not have had an easy life, but they will have a deep life. And you will see in their eyes the same resilience you've been fighting to hold on to. You will hear in their voice the echo of your own prayers. You will know, without needing proof, that this connection is not casual, it's crafted. When you've both been through darkness, you know how to appreciate the light. You don't take laughter for granted. You don't rush trust. You move with care because you know what it means to bleed. And that shared understanding becomes the soil for a bond so strong, no storm can shake it. God doesn't waste pain. He transforms it. And sometimes, the one you're meant to walk with is the one who's been walking a parallel path all along. You just didn't see them until now. Not because they weren't there, but because healing needed to happen first. You needed to become ready to recognize the one whose wounds look like yours, not to reopen them, but to honor them. And when you do, it won't feel like love at first sight. It will feel like peace at first recognition, by placing you in the same battle before the same victory. Before love looks like unity, it often looks like warfare, not against one another, but alongside one another. God has a mysterious way of bringing soulmates together by placing them in the same spiritual battles before they ever see the reward. It is in these battles, whether personal, emotional, or circumstantial, that hearts are exposed, motives are purified, and strength is tested. And those who fight through the same storms often become the ones who share the same promises. It may begin subtly. You and someone else are both wrestling through the same season. Maybe you're both recovering from betrayal, navigating deep loss, or battling discouragement in your calling. You find yourselves asking the same questions in different corners of the same battlefield. You feel the sting of loneliness, the ache of unanswered prayer, and the weight of carrying something too heavy alone. But then, in the middle of this battle, you look up, and there they are, not a rescuer, not a romantic fantasy, but a fellow warrior, someone who isn't trying to fix your pain, but is simply enduring their own with faith, someone who doesn't run from the fire, but walks through it with quiet trust in God, someone who, like you, is learning that victory doesn't always come from escape, but from perseverance. God does this intentionally. He introduces your soulmate not through ease, but through adversity, because it is in battle that true character is revealed. Anyone can seem strong when things are easy, but only those with spiritual depth can worship while bleeding, remain kind while hurting, and trust while waiting. And those are the qualities God values most when uniting two people under one divine purpose. When you're in the same battle, you learn to fight not against, but with. You learn to pray for one another, not just flirt with one another. You witness how they handle setbacks. You observe how they treat others when frustrated. You see their raw, unfiltered humanity, not the version they post for the world, but the version they surrender to God. And in this, a sacred bond begins to form. This kind of connection doesn't begin with fireworks. It begins with fire, a shared testing ground, a spiritual preparation where both hearts are refined by God's hands. And when the victory finally comes, when the season shifts and blessings begin to flow, you will both look back and realize, we didn't just meet, we were forged. We didn't just fall in love, we stood together when it was hardest to stand. It is no coincidence that some of the strongest, most enduring love stories are born out of seasons of suffering, because in suffering there is truth. In suffering there is no mask. And when God brings two people through the same valley, it's often because He intends to lead them together to the same mountaintop. So if you find yourself walking through fire, look around. You may not be alone. You may already be standing beside someone whose future is tied to yours, not because of shared ease, but because of shared endurance. And so, my dear listener, the divine unveiling of a soulmate is not a spectacle, but a story. A quiet, unfolding story, written not in the ink of emotion, but in the ink of eternity. You see, God doesn't just orchestrate meetings, He prepares hearts. He doesn't just bring you someone to love, He makes you into someone who knows how to love. He aligns your wounds with healing. He aligns your prayers with timing. He aligns your path with another, not when you are most desperate, but when you are most surrendered. That is the hallmark of divine love. It doesn't demand attention. It teaches you to pay attention. Your soulmate may already be in your life, perhaps disguised as a friend, perhaps walking the same spiritual road, perhaps hidden behind what you once called coincidence. And while the world rushes toward passion, God invites you to slow down and listen to His voice, His timing, and His peace. For when the right soul finally arrives, your spirit will not be surprised. It will remember. God introduces your soulmate not to complete you, but to complement the purpose He placed in you. And once you recognize that, love will no longer be a pursuit. It will be a promise fulfilled, quietly, faithfully, eternally. So keep walking, keep healing, keep trusting. For even now, God may be introducing you, gently, silently, to the one He chose long before you even knew what you were praying for.